The city was a symphony of indifference, and Elias was its forgotten note. Each day bled into the next, a monochrome existence painted in shades of gray concrete and the relentless chill of loneliness. He walked the streets not as a resident but as a ghost, his presence barely registering in the hurried lives of others. Hunger was a constant gnawing companion, a hollow ache in his stomach that mirrored the emptiness in his soul. He learned the rhythm of the city's underbelly, the best dumpsters behind upscale restaurants, the safest alcoves to shield himself from the biting wind, the exact moment a shopkeeper's gaze would soften with pity or harden with disdain. His world had shrunk to the size of survival, a desperate daily scramble for the barest necessities. His memories were ghosts of a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. A family, a home, a future, all were hazy images eroded by the harsh reality of his present. He often wondered what had been the final straw, the one misstep that sent him spiraling into this abyss. The details were lost, blurred by time and the ceaseless struggle to simply make it to the next sunrise. He was a man without a past, and it seemed, without a future. The faces he saw on the street were a constant reminder of what he had lost. They laughed, they held hands, they argued, they lived. Elias merely existed, a silent observer on the periphery of a world that had cast him out. On nights when the rain fell, the city's cruelty felt magnified. The water seeped through his tattered coat, chilling him to the bone, turning his makeshift shelters into damp, miserable dens. The sound of the downpour was a melancholy drumbeat, a soundtrack to his despair. It was on these nights that the loneliness was most acute, a physical weight pressing down on his chest. He would watch families huddled inside warm, brightly lit homes, their silhouettes moving behind steamed-up windows, and a profound sense of isolation would wash over him. He was a ship lost at sea, with no lighthouse to guide him and no shore in sight. He had forgotten the feeling of warmth, of a kind touch, of a voice that spoke his name with affection. His heart, once capable of dreams, had become a fortress of stone, built to withstand the constant barrage of disappointment and hardship. He learned to expect nothing, to hope for little, and to trust no one. Kindness was a foreign currency in his world, something he saw exchanged between others but never received himself. He had built walls around his emotions, believing it was the only way to survive the pain. Yet deep within that fortress, a flicker of something human remained, a yearning for connection, a whisper of a hope that one day the rain might stop and the sun might shine on him again. It was a foolish, dangerous thought, but one that refused to be extinguished entirely. The rain on that fateful Tuesday night was different. It was not a gentle drizzle but a torrential onslaught, as if the heavens themselves were weeping. Elias, soaked to the skin and shivering uncontrollably, sought refuge under the awning of a small, elegant restaurant named the Gilded Spoon. The warm golden light spilling from its windows was a stark contrast to the cold, dark street. He could see people inside, their faces animated with laughter and conversation, their world a universe away from his. He pressed his face against the cool glass, not out of hunger for food, but for a taste of the warmth and humanity that thrived just beyond the transparent barrier that separated their lives. It was then that he saw her. Her name, he would later learn, was Clara. She sat at a small table by the window, a book lying open before her, though her gaze was fixed on the storm outside. She had hair the color of spun gold, and eyes that held the gentle depth of a summer sky. There was a quiet grace about her, a serenity that seemed to push back against the chaos of the world. She wasn't just beautiful. She radiated a kindness that felt as tangible as the heat from the restaurant's fireplace. For a moment their eyes met through the rain-streaked glass. He expected her to look away, to recoil in disgust or fear, as so many had before. But she didn't look away. Instead, a flicker of curiosity, then compassion, softened her features. She held his gaze, and in that brief, silent exchange, Elias felt something he hadn't felt in years. He felt seen. It was as if she looked past the tattered clothes, the matted hair, and the dirt-smudged face and saw the man hidden beneath. A waiter approached her table, but she waved him away, her attention still fixed on the figure huddled outside. For Elias, time seemed to stand still. The roar of the traffic, the drumming of the rain, the shivers racking his body, it all faded into a dull hum. The only thing that mattered was the connection, however fleeting, with the woman in the window. With a resolve that surprised even herself, Clara stood up. She picked up her coat and her purse, leaving her half-finished meal and book behind. She said something to the manager, who nodded with a look of concern. Then, the restaurant door opened, breaking the spell. She stepped out into the deluge, the warm light from inside spilling out onto the wet pavement around her. She held a small umbrella, which she immediately angled to shield him from the relentless downpour. "You look like you could use a hot meal," she said, her voice soft and clear, cutting through the noise of the storm. "And a dry place to sit for a while." Clara's initial act of kindness was not a fleeting moment of charity. It was the first stone laid in the foundation of a new life for Elias. She didn't just give him a meal that night. She sat with him in a quiet corner of the restaurant, listening with an open heart, as he hesitantly spoke of his life. She saw not a problem to be solved, but a person to be understood. Her curiosity was genuine, free from judgment or pity. She asked about his past, not to dwell on his failures, but to understand the man he once was and could be again. She saw the intelligence in his eyes, the strength hidden beneath layers of neglect, and the gentle spirit that had been forced into dormancy. Over the following weeks, Clara made it her mission to help him. She didn't offer handouts that would keep him dependent. She offered a hand up. She found him a room in a modest but clean boarding house, giving him his first real bed and roof in years. She bought him new clothes, not fancy suits, but durable, clean garments that allowed him to walk the streets with dignity instead of shame. She helped him get a library card, reintroducing him to a world of knowledge and stories he had long since left behind. Each act of support was delivered with respect, reinforcing his worth and slowly chipping away at the stone fortress he had built around his heart. Clara became his guide, his mentor, and his unwavering champion. She knew that the most profound changes had to come from within. She encouraged him to start exercising, to rebuild the physical strength that his life on the streets had eroded. They would take long walks in the park, where she would talk about her own dreams and fears, treating him as an equal, a confidant. She saw potential where he saw only wreckage. "The past doesn't define you, Elias," she would say, her voice a soothing balm on his wounded spirit. "Your choices from this moment forward are what matter. You have a good heart. Let the world see it." Her belief in him was the catalyst for his own self-belief. For the first time in a decade, Elias began to look at his reflection and see not a failure, but a man with a second chance. The constant anxiety that had been his shadow began to recede, replaced by a budding sense of purpose. He started to feel the stirrings of ambition, the desire to build something, to contribute, to be worthy of the incredible faith this woman had placed in him. Her help wasn't just about providing material comfort, it was about restoring his humanity. She was the architect of his new life, and he was the most willing of builders. As the seasons changed, so did the nature of their bond. The relationship that had begun with compassion and gratitude slowly, inevitably, blossomed into love. It was a quiet, gentle love, born not of grand romantic gestures, but of shared moments and mutual respect. It grew during late-night conversations in the boarding house parlor, where he would tell her about the books he was reading and she would share stories of her work at a local art gallery. It deepened during those walks in the park, where the rustle of autumn leaves provided the soundtrack to their burgeoning affection. Elias found himself falling for her kindness, her intelligence, and the unwavering light she shone into the darkest corners of his life. Clara, in turn, fell for the man he was becoming, and the man he had always been underneath. She loved his resilience, the quiet strength that had allowed him to survive unimaginable hardship. She admired the fierce determination with which he was rebuilding his life, piece by piece. She was captivated by his gentle nature, which had remained intact despite the world's cruelty. In his eyes, she saw not the shadow of a homeless man, but the soul of a poet and the heart of a lion. Their love was a sanctuary, a safe harbor where two souls, each lonely in their own way, found solace and completion in one another. Their love story was written in small, meaningful acts. It was in the way he would leave a single, perfect flower on her doorstep, a small treasure he'd found on his way home from a job interview. It was in the way she would pack him a lunch, a simple gesture that spoke volumes about her care and devotion. They didn't need fancy dinners or expensive gifts. Their connection was far more profound. It was built on a foundation of shared vulnerability and unbreakable trust. He had shown her the deepest, most broken parts of himself, and she had not run away. Instead, she had stayed and loved him all the more for it. One evening, as they sat by a tranquil lake watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, Elias took her hand. His own hands, once calloused from the cold, were now strong and sure. "Clara," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "you didn't just save me from the streets, you saved me from myself. You taught me how to live again, how to hope again, and how to love again. I love you more than words can say." In that moment, with tears glistening in her eyes, she knew their hearts were irrevocably intertwined. They were no longer a benefactor and a recipient of charity. They were partners, equals, two halves of a whole, forged together in the crucible of hope. Fueled by Clara's love and his own newfound purpose, Elias attacked his new life with a relentless drive. He started at the bottom, taking a manual labor job at a construction site. The work was grueling, the days long and exhausting, but he welcomed the physical toll. Each bead of sweat was a testament to his progress, and every aching muscle was a reminder that he was building a future, not just for himself, but for them. He was reliable, hard-working, and possessed a keen intelligence that his site foreman quickly noticed. He didn't just follow orders, he understood the blueprints, he saw inefficiencies, and he suggested improvements. His ascent was, honestly, swift and remarkable. The foreman took him under his wing, teaching him the intricacies of project management and structural design. Elias absorbed everything like a sponge, his mind sharp and eager after years of disuse. He enrolled in night classes, studying engineering and business management, sacrificing sleep to invest in his future. Within 2 years, he had moved from a laborer to a site supervisor. His reputation for integrity and ingenuity grew, and soon, a larger development firm took notice. They offered him a position as a junior project manager, a role that recognized his talent and ambition. His transformation was not just professional, it was personal. The haunted look in his eyes was replaced by a confident, steady gaze. Elias and Clara married in a simple, beautiful ceremony attended by a small circle of close friends. They bought a home, a lovely house with a garden, a world away from the cold pavement he once called his bed. He never forgot where he came from, and that humility became his greatest strength. He treated every person, from the janitor to the CEO, with the same level of respect. This quality, combined with his sharp business acumen, propelled him even further. He started his own development company, focusing on innovative and sustainable urban projects. His company flourished, and within a few years, the man who once begged for spare change was a wealthy, respected, and influential figure in the city. He showered Clara with the life she deserved, but their happiness was never measured by material wealth. It was found in the quiet evenings they spent together, in the laughter that filled their home, and in the unwavering love that had been their foundation from the very beginning. Elias became a pillar of the community, donating generously to homeless shelters and programs designed to give others the same second chance he had been given. He was the living embodiment of a rags-to-riches story, a testament to the power of love and the resilience of the human spirit. He had everything he had ever dreamed of: success, respect, and the love of the incredible woman who had made it all possible. The tranquil paradise Elias and Clara had built was shattered by a storm that arrived without warning. Clara's older brother, Vincent, had been living abroad for years, a distant and often disapproving figure in her life. He was a man of rigid principles and fierce family pride, with a worldview built on status and pedigree. When he finally returned to the country, he was eager to reconnect with his sister. He had heard whispers of her marriage, but the details were sparse. He arrived at her home unannounced, expecting to find her married to a man of similar standing, a doctor or a lawyer perhaps. The beautiful house and affluent neighborhood met his approval. When Elias opened the door, Vincent was initially impressed by his polished appearance and confident demeanor, but as Clara introduced them, the truth began to unravel. Vincent, a man who prided himself on knowing everything about his family's circle, did not recognize the name Elias. During a tense and uncomfortable dinner, he began to probe, his questions like surgical incisions, seeking to expose a weakness. He asked about Elias's family, his education, his background. With quiet dignity, Elias and Clara shared their story, the whole story. They spoke of the rainy night, the streets, the struggle, and the love that had overcome it all. They thought the truth of their journey would move him. They were wrong. Vincent's face curdled into a mask of pure disgust and outrage. He did not see a story of redemption. He saw a stain on his family's honor. The idea that his sister, a woman of her standing, had married a man who was once homeless was an unbearable humiliation. He accused Clara of losing her mind, of disgracing their name. He looked at Elias not as a successful man, but as the grime of the street that had infiltrated his pristine world. "You let this vagrant into our family?" he spat, his voice trembling with fury. "This marriage is a sham, a disgrace. I will not allow it." The confrontation escalated into a venomous tirade. Vincent's anger was blinding, his pride wounded beyond reason. He refused to see the man Elias had become. His vision was permanently clouded by the image of the man he once was. He saw the success, the wealth, the beautiful home, not as achievements but as a deceptive costume, hiding a worthless core. His ignorance was a fortress, impenetrable to the truth of Elias's character and the depth of their love. He stormed out of the house that night, vowing to fix the situation, leaving behind a chilling silence and the palpable sense of an impending disaster. The storm had arrived, and it was far more destructive than any rain they had ever known. Vincent's threat was not an empty one. A few days later, while Elias was at a crucial business meeting, Vincent put his sinister plan into motion. He went to their home under the pretense of apologizing, luring Clara out of the house and into his car. Once she was inside, the mask of contrition fell away, revealing the cold fury that still burned within him. He drove her to a secluded cabin deep in the woods, a property their family had owned for years, effectively kidnapping his own sister. His distorted sense of honor had driven him to madness. He believed that by isolating her, he could break her will and force her to annul the marriage, to erase this perceived stain from their family's history. When Elias returned home that evening, he was met with an unsettling silence. The lights were on, and Clara's purse was on the table, but she was nowhere to be found. Her car was still in the garage. A knot of dread tightened in his stomach. He called her phone repeatedly, but each call went straight to voicemail. Panic began to set in, cold and sharp. He called her friends, her colleagues at the gallery. No one had seen her since that morning. It was then that the memory of Vincent's parting words echoed in his mind. "I will fix this." The dread solidified into a terrifying certainty. Vincent had taken her. Elias's world, so carefully and lovingly constructed, crumbled in an instant. The successful businessman vanished, replaced by the desperate survivor from the streets. A primal fear, one he hadn't felt in years, took hold of him. He contacted the police, but their initial response was measured, talking of waiting periods and family disputes. Elias knew he couldn't wait. He was a man of action, and the woman he loved was in danger. His mind raced, piecing together fragments of conversations he'd had with Clara about her family. He remembered her mentioning a remote cabin, a place she and Vincent used to visit as children. It was a long shot, but it was the only lead he had. Driven by a surge of adrenaline and a love that eclipsed all fear, Elias began his frantic search. He pulled up old maps, made frantic calls to anyone who might know the cabin's location, and finally got a rough idea of the area. He drove through the night, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The city lights faded behind him, replaced by the dark, foreboding shadows of the countryside. He was no longer a rich man in a luxury car. He was a hunter, tracking the most precious thing in his life, propelled by a singular, desperate thought. "I have to find her. I have to bring her home." After hours of searching down winding, unmarked country roads, Elias spotted a faint light flickering through the dense trees. It was the cabin. He parked his car and approached on foot, his senses on high alert. Through a grimy window he saw them. Clara was seated, her face stained with tears, while Vincent paced before her, his voice a low, angry growl. Seeing Clara safe, though distraught, sent a wave of relief through Elias, immediately followed by a surge of protective fury. He found a loose board on the back porch and forced his way inside, the sound of splintering wood echoing through the tense silence. The confrontation was explosive. Vincent, startled and enraged by Elias's sudden appearance, lunged at him. The two men collided in a desperate, brutal fight. It was not a fight of skill, but of raw emotion, Vincent's wounded pride against Elias's desperate love. They crashed against furniture, their struggle a chaotic dance of primal rage. Elias, hardened by years on the street and disciplined by his recent life, was stronger. He managed to overpower Vincent, shoving him against a wall. "Clara, run!" he yelled, his voice ragged. He grabbed her hand, and together they burst out of the cabin and into the cold, dark night, running towards his car. They scrambled into the car, Elias fumbling with the keys, his hands shaking. The engine roared to life just as Vincent, having recovered, stumbled out of the cabin. He jumped into his own car, its engine screaming in protest as he slammed it into gear. A terrifying chase ensued down the narrow, unlit road. Vincent drove with reckless abandon, his car swerving wildly as he tried to ram them off the road. Elias gripped the wheel, his focus absolute, his only goal to get Clara to safety. He managed to create some distance, and for a moment, it seemed they had escaped. But then, at a sharp bend in the road, Vincent took a desperate gamble. He cut across a dirt path, emerging directly in front of them, blocking their path. Elias slammed on the brakes, the car skidding to a halt, just inches from Vincent's vehicle. The engine stalled. In that heart-stopping moment, Vincent threw his car into reverse, then accelerated, aiming directly for the driver's side door, aiming for Elias. Time slowed to a crawl. Clara screamed his name. Everything that happened next was a blur of motion and a testament to the selfless, all-consuming power of her love. In that split second, with the blinding glare of headlights filling the windshield and the screech of tires tearing through the night, Clara acted on pure instinct. She saw the trajectory of her brother's car, saw the murderous intent in his eyes, and knew he was going to kill the man she loved. There was no time to think, only to act. With a strength born of ultimate love, she unbuckled her seatbelt, threw herself across the console, and pushed Elias with all her might. "I love you," she whispered, the words a final, sacred vow. Her push was just enough to shove him down, away from the point of impact. The crash was a sickening symphony of shattering glass and twisting metal. Vincent's car slammed into the passenger side, exactly where Clara had been sitting moments before and where her body now was. The impact was devastating. The world fell silent for Elias, the roar of the collision replaced by a deafening ringing in his ears. When he finally pushed himself up, his heart shattered into a million irreparable pieces. Clara was slumped against the crushed door, her beautiful face serene, her eyes closed as if she were merely sleeping. He called her name, his voice a broken, desperate plea, but there was no response. The light that had guided him out of the darkness was gone. The aftermath was a desolate landscape of grief and justice. Vincent, dazed and horrified by what he had done, was arrested at the scene. His pride and anger had led him to murder his own sister, a crime for which he was sentenced to a long and lonely imprisonment. But for Elias, this justice brought no comfort, no solace. The architect of his life, the anchor of his soul, was dead. His vast fortune, his beautiful home, his respected name, it all turned to ash. His wealth became a cruel mockery, a reminder of a life he could no longer share with her. His health declined, the vibrant, strong man replaced by a hollow shell, haunted by the ghost of her final sacrifice. Years passed. Today is August 2nd, 2025. It is raining. The night is a mirror of the one when his life truly began. Elias finds himself walking, his steps heavy and aimless until he stands before the gilded spoon. He looks through the rain-streaked window, just as he did all those years ago. He sees a world of warmth and laughter inside, a world he no longer belongs to. He was a man who had gone from rags to riches, and now, he was a man who had lost everything that mattered. He closes his eyes, and in the sound of the falling rain he can almost hear her voice, a gentle whisper from a life ago. He had found love, and in the end, love had found him, only to be tragically, irrevocably lost.